What's going on, everybody? It's your boy BrianDaddy coming at you with another video. Today we're going to dive into another topic now that we've already covered kind of a basic overview of the game and the gameplay of Ashes of Creation. I think a good place to start today would be to dive into the classes. Now, we're not going to go over each class individually. I'm actually going to probably put out separate videos for each class, but I do want to go over the classes, the archetypes, and the roles that each of these classes fill. So in Ashes of Creation, essentially classes are a combination of primary and secondary archetype. The class progression in Ashes of Creation proceeds as follows. A player chooses their primary at the start of the game, and they cannot change that. So as soon as you create a class at the main menu, that's your primary archetype. At level 25 is when you'll be able to choose your secondary archetype. Now, as you level, players will gain skill points as they level, and you'll be able to use those points to implement into your skill tree, and I will go ahead and show some footage of that as well. But it's not possible to max out the skills in a skill tree, so picture it as like any other kind of basic MMO where you have to kind of pick and choose talents that you like over others. Now, when you're choosing your secondary archetype, when you reach level 25, it's going to be essentially a combination of your primary and your secondary. It doesn't provide any like additional skills, but what it does is it essentially augments primary skills based off of your secondary archetype is what you can implement. Your class progression also does not relate to anything within the artisan progression tree, so that's something you don't have to really worry about. And world events do not directly impact class effectiveness as well. There will be ancillary effects in terms of availability of equipment, enhancements, and tattoos. Now, let me go ahead and show you guys the 8 archetypes. We have Bard, Cleric, Fighter, Mage, Ranger, Rogue, Summoner, and Tank. In the background footage here, you can see we actually have some Mage gameplay with Steven showing off some of the Mage abilities in a recent live stream from a few months back. Now, in terms of balancing in Ashes of Creation, it's going to be more group focused, and it's not really going to be based on 1v1 combat. So the 1v1 matchups are going to be based on a rock, paper, scissors kind of dynamic of, there's not going to be one class that'll be superior to another. One guy beats this guy beats that guy. It's going to be fair in terms of that regard. There's several factors at play when you are balancing combat skills, and it's going to take them a lot of testing and a lot of patches to get it right. And that's something that, they're not really concerned about right now at the beginning of Alpha 2, whenever that does come out here in the fall. But going later on in alpha and once we get to betas, balancing is definitely going to be very important to them, and they're definitely going to look for feedback at that time. Of the 64 classes that are partitioned, into 8 primary archetypes, the balancing of the active skills really only relates to the 8 primaries. They're not trying to balance it for all 64 classes. So essentially, they're just balancing it based on your first 8, the primary that you pick. Certain secondary archetypes are, capable of bridging the gap between their counterpart. So there is some things you can pick with augments that might be able to help you get better at certain situations. There's also a lot of synergies that exist between class skills, weapon skills, passives, proc, and status conditions. They've shown this, and they're showing it here in the gameplay as well, where if you affect a mob with frozen, and then you hit him with electric, it can do increased damage. Or if you hit him with his frost wand first, slowing him and giving him frost stack effects, now when he hits him with another frost ability, it does more damage. And that's good. That's really important. I think that is good for balancing and kind of creates a rotation for you to know, like, hey, if I want to do the most amount of damage, I need to do this. But you don't always have to fall into that effect. I think it is going to be important for you to know your synergies and build and work around them, but knowing that you're not going to be able to do it all the time based on whatever scenario you might be in. In terms of the meta, which is a very important discussion, because no matter what game you play, no matter what you do, people are going to find the meta, right? And it is unfortunate, but we are in the technological age of YouTube and all the other social medias. So once something is considered meta by a popular, content creator, it will get overused and abused. And I can go into a whole discussion about meta, but let's just keep it in terms of kind of what their goal is. Basically, they're going to try and emphasize like micro metas that work specifically to encounters and de-emphasize macro metas that work for everything. So essentially, he's going to make certain things like, yes, you want to use this in this scenario, but it's not going to be good for every scenario, which is good. That's kind of what you should build around. Now, the effectiveness of classes, skills, and gear is going to depend on the adversary or the encounter. And there will be optimal builds for different challenges and difficulty ratings. So let's say if I was going to go fight a fire dragon, chances are you're going to need some kind of frost mage with you. You might need some frost resistant gear. Sorry, did I just say fire? The other way around. If you're going to go fight a fire dragon, you'll probably need fire resistance and a frost mage to do more damage to that. Things like that. And that's very important. That builds into the world and makes it feel much more, real in a fantasy sense. Different challenges are also presented dynamically to players based on the node progression, and, those situations are based on the same rock, paper, scissors design, and they will inspire horizontal gear chase. That the dynamic challenges will change from month to month, causing a shift in demand in the economy, and the different builds are required by the new content. So when there's a new event that pops up, and they notice, hey, this isn't getting utilized, they can make that get utilized. So they're trying, as they said, dynamically, they want to balance everything. Now, I think this is going to be extremely difficult. Like I've said, the meta is going to be extremely important as to how they balance this game and how they nerf and buff everything. You're never going to make everyone happy, but if they can find a way to balance it in a good way, that'll be a great thing to have. Yeah, so also, that's another thing as well with the intricacies of how the nodes interact. It also kind of means that it's like it may be possible to achieve like a meta server build, but it's going to be difficult from world to world, because everyone's going to have. What's so great about the node system is that not each server is going to be the same. Each server is going to have its own identity, and that's also something that is really enticing and kind of interesting about the game. Alrighty, now let's dive into the class ability. There's primary skills, and that's based on your archetype. Now, outside of those class-specific skills, there also may be a subset of universal skills, such as like an active block or a dodge. I believe they have added the dodge and the blocking. Now let's go into class augments. When you choose your secondary archetype, when you hit level 25, you're going to be offered 4 different schools of augmentation, and each school affects the primary archetype skill in a different way. Each skill in the primary tree as well is going to have several augment options from the secondary tree, so you're not going to be locked into like one choice, so you will be able to kind of pick and choose how you want to identify with your character. So it's going to be pretty neat. And each augment does have a level requirement, so you are going to have to level up to be able to unlock augments. The augments to primary schools can fundamentally change the way an ability works, and adapting to what that ability once did to incorporate the identity of the secondary archetype. They're not going to have many, but they do say that there will be some. And augments do not cost skill points. That is also good news. You'll still be able to pick your skill trees, but augments will not cost skill points. If you decide to choose the same primary and secondary archetype of class, it will increase the focus on the archetype. So if you wanted to go double tank and be a guardian, you're going to get a lot of tanking kind of abilities that will probably make you harder to kill, which would be pretty interesting and yeah, pretty neat. Your secondary archetype augments allow different aesthetics to apply to your primary abilities that reflect the secondary archetype selection. So some spells and general effects are going to change based on what archetype you've picked and what augment as well. Now, if you wanted to change your augmentations, it will require that you won't be able to just do that on the fly. You are going to have to go visit an NPC in a village node to be able to change out augments. Alrighty, let's talk a little bit about the class resources that are used by certain classes. The current design approach for every archetype is to basically have its own resource in addition to mana. As you see with the mage play above, he does have a mana bar. Let's talk about skill points. As I mentioned earlier, you will earn them as you level up, and you can use those to purchase skills within your tree. And skill points will accrue basically at certain milestones. They're not sure yet, but they believe it'll be like, not every level, but actually throughout your level. So like, maybe you hit your halfway point or you hit your third, your 3/4, that you would get your skill point at that point Again, subject to change in the alpha, but they're probably going to find a good balance of where to award you your skill points. They can be used to unlock universal skills, but it's at the expense of getting your class specific skills. So again, that's another risk reward you kind of have to think about. Now, if you wanted to respec as well, adventuring skills may require traveling to a specific location rather than being able to just do it on the fly. And universal skills, such as active blocking and dodge rolling, are able to be unlocked by all archetypes. So you will be able to do dodge on the mage, block on the mage if you wanted to equip the shield. Again, you're going to be able to use basically all weapons on all archetypes as well. The developers will be testing the use of separate energy mechanics for universal skills, so they're thinking about, having an endurance bar, essentially, so that way you can't just spam dodge roll everywhere you wanted to go. Alrighty, we've pretty much covered the classes, the archetypes pretty extensively. Let's just talk about the roles. It's going to have the traditional trinity of tank, DPS, and healer, or tank damage support, I guess would be a better term. Rogues are your damage, rangers are your damage, mage is your damage, fighter is your damage, cleric is your support, and bard is also your support. Tank is actually the only tank in the game, so you can't play another tank class. So those will be highly sought after. If you're looking to be important and play an important role in Ash's Creation, I would recommend playing a tank, cleric, or bard. You're going to get invited to a lot of groups. You're going to be important. I actually have been leaning towards playing tank since very early on, and that will most likely be what I play, because I just love playing a dwarf, and I love the fact of being a dwarf tank. It just seems amusing to me, and it goes well. It's something I want to do. But yeah, that's basically what the roles are going to fill. And although, the traditional roles are present, players should not feel branded by their primary archetype, because you can very well tune your class as to how you want it to be. It's going to be great. Anyways, this is a little bit of a longer video. I just wanted to say thank you to everyone who's been tuning in, and appreciate you guys for watching the videos. Don't forget to hit that like and subscribe down below, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Have a good one.